Well, g'day all, and welcome back to the AgPro cast. Today we've got our great friend of the podcast, Matt Holden, back. Matt, for those who haven't heard him before, is a farmer, co-owner of Kelso Genetics, and also a self-confessed people person from Havelock North, not North Havelock. I really need to get that right, which is in the Hawke's Bay area of NZ. Now, following on from Matt's own battles with mental health, he started the organisation Mates of Mates for Mates, and which is all about creating a lifestyle which is leading to a healthy mind. So, g'day, Matt. How you going?
Hi, Ed, and hi to all the viewers out there. And thanks for having me back. It's great.
Yeah, awesome to get you on. So, Matt, how's it going in your area? So, you've faced quite a lot of issues in your area over the last 12 months,
Yeah,
environmentally,
that's
socially, governmentally. I don't even
yeah.
know if
Look,
that's a
look,
word.
I remember 2020. I was on this, and we were in the grip of a pretty major drought. And then on Valentine's Day last year, the 14th of February, Cyclone Gabrielle turned up. She dropped 800 mils of rain in a matter of hours, and basically there was a tsunami coming down from the hills into the Esk Valley, the Narrowrora Valley, and it was just horrific. Never seen devastation like it. So the recovery is still going on, and look, it was a real test of people's resilience. Tragically, 11 lives were lost, and our thoughts go out to all those families. But look, the event was it was in the middle of the night, which was probably a relief. So the roads weren't busy, but the all the services, fire, police, the lifeguards, it was amazing the way people responded. And it was, I suppose, sometimes in adversity, it's what comes out of it is a real show of strength with communities and actually just how resilient people are.
And that hasn't been the only issue you've faced over there. Like you've financially, I think you're having some of the similar issues to that what we've faced in Western Australia with livestock pricing as well.
Yeah, prices are pretty low. But, saying that, we've seen some pretty good times as well. But I think the real issue is that costs are just continuing to rise. And then you throw in an interest rate rise as well. So it just makes it's a lot more challenging. And, not being one to whinge, but it is dry. Dry autumns aren't that ideal. The rams are out. It's quite a critical time of year. But at the end of the day, look, the sun gets up every morning and people are just getting on with it.
So with where you are, do you suffer? I suppose you don't suffer as much as the South Island as far. Will you grow more feed in winter than the South Island would, or would you still? Because we can still grow a lot of. It still hasn't rained here, but it's warm enough that when it does rain, things are going to grow. Do you
Yeah,
have to have a fair wedge going into winter there?
well, up the east coast, they will grow grass, not a lot, but they will. Maybe 10 to 15 kgs of dry matter a day. As you go west, that reduces. It obviously gets colder. You rise in altitude, and look, our friends in the South Island from Marlborough through to mid Canterbury, it's as dry as a bloody dog biscuit. And unfortunately for them, they've got winters coming, and that's 100, 120 days of no growth. So that's going to put a bit of pressure on feed reserves. But again, that they always set themselves up for these long, cold winters. And it just makes it a long winter when you start feeding out and shifting breaks now. She's a long way till the end of September.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's talk about mental health. Let's talk about how you set up Mates of Mates for Mates and where that came from and where that's going.
Well, and I suppose, it's often referred to as the top paddock, isn't it? The top 2 inches, and it's the most important paddock on, on the farm or in the business. And so, look, Mates of Mates for Mates, it was actually a collective group of friends in the lockdown of 2020. We got involved with the press up challenge, and a lot of good came out of that. Actually, between the group of us, we raised $15,000 and brought 700 copies of Doug Avery's book, The Resilient Farmer, which were distributed throughout the regions. But like all these things, sometimes it just sort of goes a bit quiet. And anyway, long story short, about a year later, I thought, bugger this, I'm going to pick up the ball and run. And so here we are today. And we had an event in November last year in Hawke's Bay, had 300 turn up. I had most of them actually doing 25 press ups, which was pretty bloody awesome. TV3 were there. It was a huge success. We had great motivational and inspirational speakers, Ed. And I think, when the chips are down, people just need a bit of a pick-me-up.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of out of that, you've been doing a few presentations for people around the country. And I thought it'd be a good idea to you sent me a presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I thought it's something we could send out to our clients who are feeling the heat, or unfortunately feeling the heat, feeling the pressure a bit at the moment, a bit like yourself. They've got a plan, but there's a big variety of people out there, isn't there, Matt? And people everything can seem okay on the outside, but can be a bit of turmoil going on the inside, and you just won't know it, will you?
Oh, look, I think it's that's right. And to coin a phrase, they say if someone's got a broken arm, you can see it physically and visually. But if someone's got a broken mind, unless they tell you, you don't know.
Yeah.
And I think what I've learnt, and a lot of people have learnt, people react and respond, to difficult times and stress in different ways. Some are better than others, and it's learning off those people that I suppose that can cope through those challenges and actually help those that are just in they're just struggling themselves.
Yeah. So shall I roll through the prezzo, mate?
Was that a bit of a pun, Ed, as we're going? This,
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Love
crank
this.
into it, Ed, and strap yourselves in,
Right, yeah.
folks. We're going for a ride. Oh, that's so cool.
Oh, I love that, Matt. You know what I love about that? I love the laughing at the end. It puts a big smile on my face.
Oh yeah, look, it was actually really cool. And actually, you can't see it, but on the sort of bottom left, I think we pulled about 4.5 Gs.
Jesus. Yeah. You there?
So yeah, okay, well, I've got a mate who he's a bit of an adventurer, and I just think it's good to get a bit of adrenaline throwing through your veins, every now and then, maybe a few times a year, because it just actually makes you feel alive. And I think, just putting yourself outside of your comfort zone, I think it actually does us a whole lot of good. And sometimes there's comfort in discomfort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great way to start.
Righto. So, look, I was asked a couple of weeks ago by federated farmers on the west coast of the North Island to come and give a presentation to the Manawatu and Rangitikei districts. And so I actually just put this presentation together the night before. And so I sort of, I called it Fed Talks, and that's obviously a bit of a play on words with TED Talks. And the topic was to keep your chin up during tough and uncertain times. So then I did that talk, came home with it, sort of was talking to Ed. He was quite keen to see it. So then I thought, well, I'll actually tweak it again. So I've called it Matt Talks, and Matt's an acronym for motivational, authentic, and therapeutic. And I would love some feedback on this, but I think that's what this talk actually will do to people, is motivate them. They'll tell that it's authentic, and I think it's therapeutic in a way that it'll actually help people. Who's the guy in the top left corner? That's my great mate called Sheep. Lawrence Sheriff is his real name. We first met at the age of 10 on the sports field. I was at Herworth, he was at Huntly, and I was terrified of him. He was that size when he was at Huntly. I was a halfback, and he burst through a ruck as a prop, and literally I just about shat myself. And
he had a beard as well, did he?
Well, he actually, yeah, and the reason he's called Sheep, actually he used to have white woolly hair. So, but we still call him Sheep, and we love Lawrence, and he's actually the godfather of our middle son, Johnny. And look, Lawrence, he's a real inspiration, and he's had his own battles, and they were massive. In fact, you'd almost call it wars. But, he's suffered for depression for over a decade. That led to alcoholism, and he's got himself through those battles, or through that battlefield, and he found something that actually really helped him, and actually that's boxing. And what I love about this photo, which I happened to took myself, Lawrence, we went down to watch him do a fight for life. The caption for this photo, life is worth fighting for. And Lawrence is a living proof. And for him, it's actually not about the fight, it's about the training and the discipline, that the sport of boxing brings. So I just thought it was rather fitting to have that. And he was chuffed when I said, look, I want him as my pin-up boy.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
getting out of your comfort zone. Sometimes you look at things and they look the right way, and sometimes you look at them and they look the wrong way up, don't they? And obviously just a couple of stills as we did our inside loop in a little Cessna Aerobat. But, as I said before, I think, getting a bit of adrenaline going through your body, it's like a bit of a recharge. I just think it's really good for you. And look, that's the head of the Rakaia Gorge that we're looking at. So, some beautiful South Island high country. So what I did with this presentation, I sort of just jotted some bullet points down that I thought were important to me, but also important to the lives we live, day to day. And then I just found images that would best reflect those bullet points. And look, all these images I've taken myself. Photography is one of my passions. And I think the thing in life, you never know what it's going to throw at you. So you just got to expect the unexpected. This little farm that my business partner, Hamish Bibby, and I co-own. Hamish went out on a Saturday morning. He'd been around the farm Friday afternoon, and he went out and he thought, what the hell's that? And there was this crack, well, more like a crevasse. And so just as a disclaimer, there was no animals were harmed, no one was hurt. This happened in an instant. There were slabs of turf the size of cricket wickets just sitting intact in the bottom. Anyway, look, we had a bit of fun with it.
Just another day in New Zealand, Matt.
Well, look, that's right. And so ended up doing a couple of 3 radio interviews, and it became known as Matt's Crack. And I said to one of the interviewers, I said, look, my cracks never had so much exposure. So I suppose the key is to sort of, it didn't really create a problem, but we certainly had a lot of fun with it. And the little image on the right, if you sort of follow the skyline to where it disappears at the bottom, that little speck, that's me standing inside the crack. So it just sort of gives you a bit of an idea of the scale of it. I reckon you'd probably lose 6 road trains in there, 2 decks high, 3 on the bottom, 3 on the top. I think family's the most important thing in life, but next to family are friends. And I think it's really important, to always make new friends. And look, I was fortunate, 30 years ago, like a lot of us Anzacs went and traveled the globe. And as you do when you're sort of poking around different countries, and you're always interested to sort of meet people. And when we met Dan and Terry Streetman, didn't actually know that Dan was a lieutenant in the Ranger Division of the US Army, because obviously he was in Mufti, sort of thing. Actually, they were actually on their honeymoon actually when we met them. But they invited us back to their camp in Italy, and that's where that top left photo is. Dan's got his finest gear on and his red beret. And then on the right-hand side, that was Dan 30 years ago. And then the picture where he's fully kitted up, that was his last hurrah in the US Army when he was in Iraq. And then he got out, he put himself through Harvard and Harvard Business School. And he's now the CEO of a cyber software company with about 1,200 people underneath him. And look, I was fortunate. In September last year, I was in Tahoe, where Dan and Terry live, and the bottom left photo, we recreated the top photo from 30 years ago. And we hadn't seen each other for 30 years, but we'd kept in touch just, via a bit of chatting sort of through social media. And it was just so special to reconnect. And in fact, I'm going back to see them in October again this year. And so it's, if I hadn't walked into that bar in some little street in the Greek islands, would have never have met these guys. And we are, we're great friends. We're really close. I think it's really cool. And, I suppose just playing off mates of mates for mates, making new friends is really important, I think. And another way of doing that is through, belonging to a club or a sports team or some community, type group. And for me, cricket is a passion. And so there's about 50 of us belong to the Ocean Beach County Cricket Club. That's the boundary behind us that then just goes straight onto the beach. The average age of our club members would be 50, and we have a lot of fun, and we're probably the best dressed cricket club in New Zealand. So we certainly get points there. And hey, look, we have a bit of fun on the field, and we can still play the game, but, we don't run many threes, let's say that. and
Save your legs, mate.
Sorry, Ed?
Save your legs.
Yeah, well, look, and then on the left, Matt Chisholm, he's a bit of a TV celebrity here in New Zealand, and he actually wrote an amazing book called Imposter in 2021, and he was my wingman at this Mates of Mates for Mates event we had in November. I'd heard him speak a year prior, and I was just so touched by what he had to say and how open and honest he was. And so I reached out to him and said, look, would you like to get involved and help? And he said yes. It was so cool. And so we're actually we're going to Gisborne tomorrow, and we're doing another event up there, and Matt will be my wingman again. So what's better than one Matt? Two Matts.
But I think the big message is reaching out and sort of creating that community, or trying to find your community wherever you are, isn't it? And I think we were talking about yesterday about whether that's using a WhatsApp group with mates from old friends, or staying in touch with people, but creating that social network, particularly as a lot of people are isolated on farms, a lot of our clients, and probably a lot of them are quite introverted as well, trying to overcome those factors to actually get out and create that network. If it's bowling or cricket or footy or whatever it is, it's or even just being part of it, it's just so good for your brain. I think that's what you're talking about.
No, Ed, look, exactly. And obviously communication is pretty easy in this modern world with the technology that we have, basically it's sitting in our pocket. And it's amazing, sometimes just receiving a text from a mate you haven't heard of for a while, it's amazing how that can pick you up. And even just sharing a photograph, and I know my friends in the city, they love to know what we're getting up to out in the country, and vice versa. And I think, sometimes we think we're miles apart, but we're still actually really close, as people, I reckon.
Yeah, and it's great. It's great having that expanded network, and I think sort of getting onto that of people, not just within farming, reaching out to people you might have gone to school with, or people who are doing other things, because it's great to, particularly when you're just, I suppose you're stuck in a bit of a tough situation in your industry. It's great not to have to talk about it every time you go out, go and have a yarn about, what's going on in their life and in their world. And I think that's pretty good for your brain.
I'm just looking actually at the cricket team, the players in there. We've got a butcher, we've got a real estate agent, we've got a couple of actually pretty smart businessmen, we've got a policeman, we've got a defence lawyer. It's just really cool. We've got a motivational speaker. And none of us talk about our what we get up to. And actually, what's really refreshing, the chap who's a policeman, he just said for him it's so refreshing to actually step back out of police duty, which I think can be pretty bloody tough and brutal. And he just loves the chat and banter that we all have amongst each other, and we just remove ourselves from that daily grind, I think. Here we go. So keep fit. A healthy body is a healthy mind. Actually, my father, who turns 91 in September, he always used to say this to me, and I always sort of wondered what was going on about. And I suppose when you're young, you don't really appreciate much when you're young, do you, I think? And it's not till later on and you actually realize, there's something to be said. The more you live, the more years you got under your belt, you just become a whole lot wiser and just see things, I think, more clearly. Anyway, one thing that was pretty clear for me was I got a job down the South Island High Country, and that photo on the left there, 1991, what I realised is I quite like clambering around sort of gnarly, steep, rocky faces, and actually felt sort of quite at home. And so I'm sort of standing at 8,500 feet there, and myself and another shepherd, just for giggles, in a weekend, we just thought we'd go and do that, and that was took us a couple of days. And I look back and I think, that was a lot healthier than some of our mates that were just, headed to town and basically had KFC and, sat at the boozer. And, excuse me. So anyway, 30 years on, I'm still scrambling around the hills, still love wearing wool. It's not the same swan dry, but it's the same colour, and here's a plug for all of us that are sheep farmers. It's the best fibre in the world, isn't it? There's no other fibre I'd go into that country with other than wool.
No, it's awesome. When I was over there, and some of your advice last year, we got our woolen t-shirts and woolen jackets, and it was just, and it is the right temperature for wool activewear over there. There's no doubt about that. It's just perfect.
And look, the image on the right, that was January last year. That's up on the YL Pass in the sort of in the Marlborough region, sort of towards the top of the South Island, about 6,000 feet up. And there's 9 of us dads there, and and we've all got our sons. So it's a bit of a lads and dads trip. The boys are all 23 years old. None of them, or one of them had actually done a bit of stuff like this with a bit of hunting. The rest of them hadn't. And they were just fizzing the whole time. We had 3 days on the hill carrying all our food and tents. And so it was pretty, it was reasonably hard yakka. And then we had a couple of days whitewater rafting, and then 3 days four-wheel driving. And like all these things, you've got to have a bit of a prize at the end. And the last night we stayed at the Sheriff's Quarters, they call it, but it's basically a lodge on Middlehurst Station, and they were the most incredible hosts. And so we called them the pups, the 23-year-old sons, because they basically were like pups, and they thought we were old dogs. And anyway, they wanted to have a few games, and of course one of them was had a big long kitchen table, so we had a couple of rounds of boat races with the pups, and they could drink their water bowls a lot quicker than we could. But it was a lot of fun, and what we did is created lifetime memories, for them and us. Be inspired by others, and I think the two gentlemen in this photo certainly inspire me, and I know they inspire many others. The left-hand photo, the dear gentleman with the cap and glasses around his neck, Hamilton Logan, he was born on the 21st of January 1924. He turns 100 this year, and he is just the most remarkable man. His enthusiasm, passion, and even still his willingness to still learn, it's a real inspiration. And he came and spoke at this inaugural Mates of Mates for Mates event I had in Hastings in November. He got a standing ovation afterwards. He had no notes. He walked up onto the stage with his walking stick at the age of 99. Well, actually, he was going to be 99 in 2 weeks. So he was 98 and 50 weeks old. And he spoke about resilience. And in his own lifetime, he experienced the Napier earthquake in 1931, the Great Depression. There was a massive drought in the East Coast during the 30s as well. There was food and petrol rationing. Then World War II came along. It was just, they had so much to deal with in a pretty short time with limited resources. But he's, as he said, here he is today. And so that his fortitude and resilience, it really inspired everyone in the room. And as I said, he got a standing ovation, which was just, it was so fitting. Andy Lowe, he's lying in his bed there with a halo on his neck. Tragically, he broke his neck in January of 2021, but he's made a full recovery. He was paddleboarding in the sea and got tipped off by a rogue wave, and he hit a sandbar under the water, but he also had a massive concussion, which obviously they were concerned about his broken neck naturally, but he's made a full recovery, and the concussion is obviously that's taking longer than expected, but it's Andy's attitude, and if you look at the smile on his face there, and to think, it must be horrendous to be in that position with a halo. You can't move your head. And he's the founder of our cricket club and the patron. And so we call him KP. That's short for Kerry Packer, because he's our Kerry Packer. And we love him dearly. And we have a pretty prestigious game. And there was a bit of chat about getting a trophy for it. So I went down to the Ocean Beach and went down and found a bit of some driftwood and took it to a local bat maker, James Laver from Laver and Wood, and said to James, look, could he make a trophy? And he made that, and our team logo is the Ko-Fi, which is the gold emblem on the trophy. And then so I took that into Andy, and I just think it epitomizes Andy's attitude. The smile on his face says it all. There's a guy who was that far away from losing his life, and I just love it, and he's been a real inspiration to our club. And in fact, he's out there now, he comes and plays the odd game, so it's remarkable. And
that's right.
And we're inspired by his attitude towards his recovery. That was amazing. Get out and enjoy the great outdoors. And like New Zealand, Australia, you're blessed with an incredible landscape, and probably more diverse than ours. And I think we've all got to make sure that we actually take the time to get out there and actually enjoy it, whatever the weather. And this is in the west coast of the South Island in New Zealand. And I know in Australia, you measure rainfall in millimetres. Well, over on the west coast, they measure it in metres. So, and This was on the 9th of February. We had 8 hours of West Coast rain, and honestly, we were like drowned rats. But as you can see, the boys are still smiling. So you just whatever nature throws at you, you just got to take it on the chin and deal with it. And here's a little video clip and there's a bit of a message in this video clip. It's 20 past 2 on Saturday the 10th of February, and we're like drowned rats. Here are our legendary guides, Sid and Dill. We've had West Coast rain like you wouldn't believe. 20 past 2, and here are the boys, but they're all smiling. Yay! Apparently I'm in for a beating tonight. Hey, thanks for saying yes, fellas. Legends. And unfortunately we can't really see where we've come from because the weather's just been too inclement.
Trying to make up for my technical issues.
And there's the Okuru that we're rafting tomorrow.
I think they get the message.
Yeah, and look, so the message in there to the viewers was I thank them for saying yes, and I only like surrounding myself with positive people, and that's the 5th trip like this that I've organised, and I always like to invite some some sort of freshmen each year so they can experience some of these great opportunities and the outdoors of New Zealand. But I have one rule, which it's now going to become public, but if they say no twice, I never ask them again. So, and that's the thing, and that's why, I thank those guys there. It was, it wasn't the most pleasant of days. It was actually really cold, and there wasn't much chat. But as I said, you heard me say, I thank them for saying yes and coming out and putting their best foot forward. And I think that's...
I think it's easy. It's easy to say no. I think as you get older, and whether it's you are too busy or you think you're too busy or you're suffering from work guilt and you're stretching things out, or it's quite easy to say no, I'm too busy or I can't do that, or and we were having a chat this morning and I noted that I'd started saying no a couple of times last year to a couple of things that I probably just sort of stop thinking about it and just say yes. Go out and do it and try something different, because it's a steep descent to know.
And just carrying on with that, my attitude is, look, just say yes and then sort it out later how you're going to make it happen. Someone asks you to go to a sports event with you on Saturday and you're thinking, shit, I've got to go and move that brake, or just say yes, and then you'll make a plan to get that brake shifted or shift it before you go or something. But it's just I think that's the way to look at it. The glass is always half full, it's not half empty. Believe in yourself and others will follow. Now, I actually had a bit of a chat to Ed yesterday, and it's only the second time I've actually gone public with this, and now I'm really pleased I have actually. And look, I'm actually quite proud of this achievement. So on the 9th of December in 1999, I stood on the summit of Mount Cook, which is New Zealand's highest mountain, and you can see the time. It was 20 to 8 in the morning. My guide was an amazing gentleman. Well, he is an amazing gentleman called John Entwistle. This was the 27th ascent of his up Mount Cook. He was 57 years of age at the time. We weren't racing, but we sort of got on really well. The conditions were perfect, and we got up to the top, and he looked me in the eye and he said, Matt, that's the fastest ascent I've ever had up Mount Cook. And as I said, we weren't racing, but what he did say to me, and again, I suppose there's a little lesson in life, is that when we were going down, the other groups that left at the same time as us, they were still coming up. And as John said, they'll be down in the afternoon, and some of the glaciers will start to thaw and soften, and next minute you're wading through snow up to your knees. Risk of avalanche increases. We were back at the hut at 11 o'clock, and we just scampered straight over the top. Everything was still frozen, so, and I suppose, again, there's a lesson in everything, isn't there? And just for those of you that are interested, we left at 1 o'clock in the morning, and wow. and then Ed's going to play this little video, and then I'll tell you the story behind it, and then maybe he might play it again, because then I think you'll find it actually more interesting. I better give this thing to you, John. Do you mind?
No.
All you got to do is just push the red button once to record.
Yeah.
And then just push it again to stop.
Okay. You, obviously.
Well, because there's never a photo of Hillary, was there? There's only one of dancing.
What happened, Matt?
So that's obviously standing on the summit. And so before I went, this was 1999, technology was pretty new. Video cameras were expensive and heavy. I think I shelled out, it cost me more to buy the video camera than it did to climb the mountain. I think I shelled out $4,000 for this 6 kilos of bloody plastic that I didn't really know how to drive, and chucked it in my pack, went up the top. And so the plan was that John was going to do this amazing panoramic, and because there's so many peaks in the Southern Alps and he knows them all like the back of his hand. And so I get the camera out of the bag, and I've obviously hit the record button, because then you hear me say to John, look, John, all you got to do is press the red button once to record and then press it to stop. And by the way, he was in the sort of green overtrail and I was in the pink ones. When you see that shot, if you play it again at the end, Ed, but you can see our crampons. There's quite a good shot at the start when you sort of gives you a bit of an idea of actually how steep it is up there. But anyway, so he picks it up, points it at me and says, oh, well, I suppose you want to point it at you. And fortunately he does. And then when he goes to start recording, he obviously stops it. We don't know this, and he does this incredible 15-minute 360 panoramic, and there's Ellie de Beaumont and this and that river and this glacier, and I was thinking, shit, this is just going to be so awesome. National Geographic, they're going to come and pay me a whole lot of money for this footage. And it wasn't until I got back home and I'm sort of obviously pretty excited to sort of watch this. And anyway, all I ended up with is that 28 second, and so I worked it out. For the $4,000 I shelled out for the camera, it cost me it was $142 a second, that clip. But I think it's the most valuable or priceless clip I've got. I hadn't looked at it for 25 years, and now when I look at it, I realize I didn't go to climb Mount Cook to actually go and get some video. It was a guy I used to work for. He said to me I should go and do it. And so I really look up to this guy, and he's my mentor, and he still is. And I thought, well, actually, I can do that. And so I suppose, it just shows that if you really put your mind to something and you want to do it, you can. But I actually treasure that clip now, and I can see the funny side, but I did have to check with Google, and there is no image of Hillary on the top of Everest, because he didn't trust Tenzing with the camera. So there you go.
Okay, one more time. So you've turned it on.
Yeah, you're looking down from the summit ice cap.
I better give this thing to you, John. Do you mind?
No.
All you got to do is just push the red button once to record.
Yeah.
And then just push it again to stop.
Okay. You, obviously.
Well, because there's never a photo of Hillary, was there? There's only one of dancing.
And action.
And look, the reason for the sniffle, and I'm not embarrassed by this. I burst into tears on the top of Mount Cook. It's I don't think everyone experiences it, but it's an incredible feeling to actually stand on the top of the mountain and there's nowhere else to go. It's actually incredibly emotional. So now this slide on the right, a friend of mine, David Todd from Toddy Talks, he does a bit of motivational speaking, and he found this somewhere, so I've just borrowed it from him. Thanks, Toddy. Your mind is a garden. Your thoughts are the seeds. You can grow flowers or you can grow weeds. I just think it's so amazing. And, the thing in life is we always have a choice, isn't it? And it's up to us, which way we go. Do we turn left or do we turn right? This just really resonated with me. And I think, we can all look back and think, oh, if only I'd done that. But I think the key here, is to always look forward. And my great Australian friend, Roger House, as he said, that's why the windscreen in a car is 50 times bigger than the rear vision mirror, because you're always looking forward. I think that's an absolute gem, So then I actually had this image and I thought, right, I'm going to put some bullet points or some words to go with it. Dig deep, you're worth it. And we all are, aren't we? And sometimes we've just got to dig a bit deeper. So I'll just read through what I've written here. And it's okay not to feel okay all the time. And actually, it's quite normal. And I think sometimes we tend to sort of beat ourselves up if if we're not feeling that good. But even the really good guys will tell you they have bad days. And so, it is quite normal. And we've just got to accept that. And I think this is really important is, don't try and make any important decisions when you're actually not feeling, okay, or you're not feeling that good. Because as the slide, as the picture on the right says, you can make a decision to either grow flowers or weed, and you always want to make sure you're growing flowers. And so I think, if you're not feeling that well, just park that decision and come back to it when you're actually feeling better, or go and get help, with a friend to sort of help guide you. And then I think this sort of segues into this next bullet point quite well. The biggest muscle in our body is our brain, and it needs to have a rest too. And I think it's really important that actually just to be able to switch off and give that muscle a rest, because we often do it with the rest of our muscles, but I think sometimes we don't switch our brain off, and that might mean going to bed just churning something over and over. Try and switch it off, read a book, or have something that just takes your mind away from, whatever that is that's actually sort of, making you feel anxious, or it's just gnawing away at you. And some of this might be repetitive, but I think sometimes in life, you've actually just got to go over the simple things. We are what we eat. Look after yourself and have a healthy diet. And like New Zealand, Australia, we're blessed with really good food, and we've just got to make sure that we eat that good food. And the key is, find out what works for you, with diet, exercise, and an off-farm interest, or an interest that takes you away from your day-to-day routine. Because I think that's really important. And what works for someone, may not work for you. But the key is just to find what works for you. And sometimes, people might think, gosh, that's pretty random what they're doing. But if that works for them, that's fine. And that's the key, isn't it? Everyone's different. And Emma, my darling wife, we do a lot together, but we also do a lot apart because we have different interests. And I think we've been married 26 years. That's been a real key to the success of our marriages. We do a lot together, but we also respect and recognise that we've also got different interests, and so we go off and do those. And there's no way I'd get Emma walking over the Southern Alps, and that's fine. And she loves it that I go and come back refreshed and sort of thing. And so I think, we are all different, and just respect, what works for someone might not work for you, but if it's good for them, I think that's great.
It's probably, a good moment to sort of reflect on your own battles here, Matt, when we talked yesterday about when you had to dig deep, and people around you dug deep for you. And what worked for you in getting out of your own sort of depressive period?
Yeah, so look, 2018, I'm just trying to think of the word, but I didn't have a breakdown, but so I don't know what a breakdown feels like, but I know I was depressed. There was a couple of days I just couldn't even get out of bed. And that's sort of, actually, for people that know me, it's sort of quite out of character. But I was, I was certainly suffering from anxiety, I think, and depression. I wasn't functioning at all well. But, like many people out there, you sort of pick yourself up and sort of soldier on. But what I do remember is, and even if someone was on the phone and they'd ring and say, "Oh, Matt, how are you?" And I could just feel the anxiety just shiver through my body, and mistakenly I'd say, "Oh, no, I'm fine." And, but you can only do that for so long, because eventually what happens, you just spiral. You just keep spiraling in a downward spiral. Emma could see what was happening, and my wife, and she reached out to a good friend, and, I'll never forget it. They put me in touch with Rachel Arthur, who's a nutritionist on the east coast of Australia. And it's not about sort of changing my diet, but basically I filled 9 vials of blood. And what Rachel, her way was actually, it's like if something breaks, well, what broke it? And I suppose rather than just sort of going straight for a pill, she actually wanted to sort of understand what was going on in my body. I was low on magnesium. There were a couple of key things, and so we sort of got that, right. And obviously it doesn't happen overnight. And that can be frustrating, because you sort of want to sort of, think, right, I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm going to be back to normal. But unfortunately, it does take time. I was fortunate. We had a great GP at the time, and so he put me on sertraline, and which was great. And again, it takes 90 odd days to sort of get in your system. And 2 years ago, coming up into December, and I thought, I've got this. I'm back on track. So I stopped taking the sertraline, and I know, the 10th of February, I could feel myself basically falling away again. And it was a really good lesson for me. And unfortunately, I learnt the hard way, but again, it took about 90 days going back on it to get it back into my system. I take it every day, and I'll take it, I'll keep taking it for the rest of my life, and it's amazing, and I'm fortunate that I found something that works for me. I've got friends that have, sometimes just the first prescription may not be the right one, and that again can be frustrating. But I think the key is, to identify, or first thing is to accept help, and sometimes it mightn't be you that actually identifies you need help, but it might be family or a friend. And if that's the case, you've just got to accept it, and you'll never regret it. And I certainly don't, because it's changed my life. And so I'm most grateful, to those people.
I think just before we get on there, I mean, obviously, another message in there is, accept the help, and if you can get to a good doctor or a doctor, that's another very important step. And I think it's a step that takes, it's like a lot of things, isn't it? It takes a long time to actually get to that point, but it can be the step that actually makes all the difference.
Yeah, and I think, Ed, admitting that you're not okay, it's not a weakness, it's actually a strength, and you've got to look at it that way. Yeah. I love this. I didn't write this, but I sort of stumbled across it. But, my heading that I had was, keeping close contact with your friends. And I think this summarizes why, good friends are so important. I learned very early in my life that friends are contagious. If you surround yourself with loyalty, ambition, kindness, generosity, honesty, optimism, and empathy, that's what you'll become. And as I said earlier, surround yourself with great people and positive people, because it's infectious.
Yeah, and not dickheads.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, yeah, and actually, that's one.
You got to give them a hand every now and again.
When we're recruiting with the cricket club, the main policy is no dickheads. So, and I suppose, for me, when I was doing this, I thought, well, actually, I think sometimes in life we actually don't share enough. That what works for us, and also sometimes what successes we might have had along the way. Because I think by doing this, it actually, I think it helps everyone personally, and you're not doing it trying to gain admiration, but it actually rubs off on other people. So I think it's important, and so look, this is my little recipe. I walk 6 mornings a week with a friend. It's a 1,000-foot ascent, takes 35 minutes going up and 25 going down. When we get to the top, we do 50 press-ups. And, in lockdown of 2020, I can remember getting anxiety, thinking that there's no way I was going to actually be able to do this press-up challenge, 25 a day for 25 days. And the interesting thing, 50 press-ups. So Raz and I, one morning, we timed ourselves. It doesn't even take us a minute. And then when you think about it, you think, there's always time to do a bit of exercise. And yeah, look, we love it, and it's sort of, you just feel really good. Intermittent fasting, I saw something the other day, and but the Indians, they've been doing it for thousands of years, and they were sort of, there's a bit of a joke, I think, sort of claiming that the Americans had sort of invented intermittent fasting. But look, I do it, and I think it's amazing. I don't eat before 11 a.m. I have 2 meals a day. I feel great. And even when I do these hikes over the Southern Alps, I still don't have breakfast. I wait till lunchtime, and it doesn't affect my energy levels. It just, in fact, I feel really great. And that it works for me. The other thing I do, and more so in the winter, is a 10-minute cold water submersion every Sunday. And that's basically sort of up to your chin. And what I will say is you just feel so alive when you get out. And this might sound odd, but you actually don't feel cold.
Yeah.
So I've actually found that quite fascinating.
I think as you get older too, with the inflammation and all those sort of things are pretty handy as well.
Yeah, and I was never a fan of cold water, and so this has certainly changed that. And look, a couple of 3 sort of key points. Surround yourself with positive people. They're infectious, and that rubs off on you, and it just becomes, it's sort of compounding, isn't it, really? Always keep smiling and laugh out loud. There's nothing better than a good old belly laugh, and that gets the endorphins going, and they're almost as good as adrenaline, I reckon, and it's free. And this one, honestly, people, we've just got to be better at this, and we've got to celebrate success and be proud of your achievements, no matter how small or how big they are, and be proud of other people's achievements. And I think, we're all guilty of actually not actually not putting ourselves out there and saying and celebrating success, because it does. It's but success can be measured in any way, but no matter how big or how small, we should celebrate it. In fact, we must celebrate it because it's good for us. Yeah, look, so I actually wicket keep, and sometimes I'm not that good at it. And sometimes when you're not that good at something, it can hurt. And you can see the cricket ball is it's lodged in my left ear. But shit happens. It's how you deal with it, which is what's important, isn't it? And sometimes you just got to shake it off and just get back on the horse and keep going. But as one of my mates said to me, because when we're playing cricket, we probably sledge our own teammates more than the opposition. He said, for fuck's sake, keep your eye on the ball. And I thought, well, he's pretty entitled to say that, wasn't he? Because it would have saved a bit of a headache. But, it's not all beer and skittles, is it? And I think as you get older, it's just how you deal with, those little sort of kinks in the road, I suppose. And I think attitude's got a lot to do with it, hasn't it, today?
Absolutely.
Now, I love this. And, any of you that are, Brumbies or Waratahs or, any of those rugby union teams in Australia, I'm sure like me that you'll admire this guy and think he's an absolute legend. And he is, Sam Whitelock, our most capped All Black, and he's the ambassador for Farm Strong. And I think these 5 ways to well-being are, I think that they're right on the money. And so anyway, so connect, take notice, give, keep learning, and be active. So I got in touch with Farm Strong and said, look, with my little gig with mates for mates, could I sort of segue into what you're doing, because I think there's synergy. And they said, look, this sounds great. And obviously connect, and mates of mates for mates, keep in touch with your mates. And it might not be a direct mate, but it could be a mate of a mate. And so I think that works really well. Take notice, look around. Always be aware of your surroundings. Smell the roses. I think sometimes, we just don't appreciate actually where we are or what's around us, or the people that are around us. And give, be generous. And actually, I love this. And very quickly, I think the most important thing you can give anyone is your time. And I think time is more valuable than money. And it's very easy to say, oh, look, sorry, I'm too busy. But, sometimes all someone wants is just 5 minutes of your time. And so I think, honestly, it's the most precious thing you can, give your family, your friends, a work colleague, or anyone, or even your pet. Keep learning. And so one of my team on Mates of Mates for Mates is Cam McClay, and he's a modern day adventurer, and he's a yoga guru. He's a breathing expert, and you might say breathing, but we were actually born nasal breathers, and then we're sort of morphed into a mouth breather. And you think pretty much all animals nasal breathe. And I thought about this, and I thought, when a baby's breastfeeding, and sometimes, they're on there for quite a while, they're nasal breathing. And it sort of shows that's how we were set up, because all the filtration's in our nose, there's nothing in our mouth, and it's really important. And Cam, he's such a legend. And when he goes mountain biking, he tapes his mouth shut, and he just breathes through his nose. I tried taping my mouth shut to go to bed one night, and I was almost like I got claustrophobia. But so there's a lot of you can sort of Google that, but I think it's a really good fitting thing. And also, what I love about it, it's a tool that you can have with you wherever you are. If you're having a bad day on the farm, the bloody kelpie's gone AWOL and mustering the neighbour's paddock, instead of blowing your top, just take some breaths, calm yourself, and sort of reset. Be active, keep moving. I think, the best thing we can do to ourselves is invest in our own fitness. And that might be, I just enjoy walking, and a healthy body is a healthy mind, isn't it? In New Zealand, they have this thing they say, push play for 20 minutes a day. So there we are, Ed. That's my,
I think those key messages, especially what's printed on your shirt, mates. So getting out and talking to your mates and connecting with people, that's what I'm taking away from that. I'm pretty good at the other things. Eat okay, do a lot of exercise. Although it gets a bit harder, and you've got to keep fighting. I think there's discipline in these things. You've got to keep working. It's easy. The easy option is to not do it, and that starts with connecting with friends or old friends. It's, oh, don't worry, I'll do it tomorrow. So, you're going to do something out of this. Get out there and get in touch with some people and some of your mates and get into it. Matt, thanks so much for your time again. It's been epic. I hope the show in Gisborne goes really well, and
Thanks, Ed.
we'll keep following your progression in this. And having said no once to the trip in NZ, I'm a definite yes for next January. So I don't want to get blackballed. No blackballing for me.
Hey, no, awesome, Ed. And look, for the viewers, what we'll do is Ed and I will tune in and at the end of January next year from 9,000 feet on the top of Mount Tapianuku in the inland Kaikoura Ranges of Marlborough. There you go.
9,000 feet. What?
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Ed, and thanks for everyone for tuning in and listening. Yeah.
Awesome, Matt. Thanks very much.
Bye.